to talk about Cabral and his legacy today. Ricky, you mentioned that he's still present in the consciousness of ordinary people. And I want to sort of connect our discussion of the present to what we were discussing earlier, which is Cabral's efforts to try and unify not only the different ethnicities within Guinea-Bissau, but also to achieve unity between that country and Cabo Verde. And Ricky, you just mentioned that you were in Guinea-Bissau during the 2019 election, and it was evident reading your writing about that election that Guinea-Bissau is still haunted by, the national question at the very least. And the title of the essay you wrote for Foreign Policy is liberal democracy always the answer? And obviously, once independence was achieved in 1975, Cabral didn't live to see it, and Guinea-Bissau and Cabo Verde became these liberal democratic countries like the rest of the world and marched into the new era. And what I found interesting about this essay that you wrote is that you spoke about how some Guinea-Bissauans, like the presidential contender at the time, Domingo Simus Pereira, felt like liberal democracy couldn't really unite the country's different ethnicities, and all of these different ethnic groups, or ethno-linguistic groups rather, are at different stages of economic and social development, and there needs to be, according to him at least, a better political form for giving them a vehicle to participate in the country's future. So could you say more about this? Connected to what we were discussing earlier as well, in terms of it still seems like the national question lingers in Guinea-Bissau, and how are people grappling with that question today?
Okay, thank you. So I think I'd started off by saying first, when Sean said earlier that Cabral might not have succeeded with, or had the question of national identity in Guinea-Bissau, I would kind of say that that he did create a national identity in Guinea-Bissau. When you're there, people are very much Guineans. There is this sense of we're Guineans at first, but we still very much are linked to our heritage that comes from whether Manjak or Balanta, etc. So I think that's really interesting, especially when you talk about the liberal democracy question, because some people will say Guinea-Bissau is a place that doesn't work because of multiple coups or things like that, but there are many institutions that work in Guinea-Bissau. They're just often, I don't want to say informal, formal, but I want to say maybe nationally, like recognized at a federal level or international level. The idea of
for example, give me an example.
Exactly. So one reason I find the sacred forest work so interesting is because I was there, my last visit, I was talking to a Balobera, which is a man who is kind of in charge of the sacred forest. And he was talking to me about how, of course, ceremonies go on there, but also maybe like just legal disputes will happen in the sacred forest, and he will be in charge of kind of mediating that, or they'll fix a dispute in that arena, in that area. And he said, if we go to the government, we failed. If we have to go to the authorities, we failed at our job. We are, and I think that as an institution works. Now there are many problems with that as an institution working that when it comes to maybe women's rights or just certain things, but it does do its function. It does serve the purpose of resolving legal disputes in a place where most people don't feel confident in the federal judiciary system or the federal the law enforcement. So I think, and of course those are linked with but whether you're Balanta or Manjak or Fulani. So I think bringing all of those systems of governance into one system of governance is obviously why people like Domingo Simus Pereira or many sociologists in Guinea are asking these kinds of questions. What kind of government kind of works, for us?
Right. I think you sort of, the next question we actually want to ask, what was going to ask you was about skepticism about liberal democracy. Well, but particularly the economic aspects of it, like the idea of these countries are being pushed to see the market economy, right, as the preferred economic system. And you're sort of showing how people are figuring out these things on their own. is it a fair, because I mean, again, I find this is sort of a difficult point for me to make, but could we argue that in the case of, say, what Guinea-Bissau is also showing us is that the nationalist movement as kind of the one that is in charge of the mission to transform Guinea, that is a failed project? That's the one part of it. And on the other end, as you're saying, the free market, of course, we all going to agree on, it failed. So what's left for Guineans, you are saying what's left is a sort of, is informal and decentralized. Is that the only hope that people have in a place, in a country like Guinea? And maybe, Antonio, you could also come in there if you want.
Yeah, I'm not a political. My shortcomings is that I'm not a political scientist. I'm a journalist and I'm a recorder of stories. But people's stories, hopefully,
but, of course,
give insight to people.
You're seeing things, right?
Yes, exactly. I can tell you what people tell me, and I think one reason I'm interested in things like the women's role in liberation movement and the role of sacred forests is that these ways of working are different ways of looking at how we value what we value in our society, and whether that's economic or cultural or political decision making. I think the decentralization conversation is happening with a lot of brilliant Guinean thinkers in Bissau, and so there is that definitely effort to try and see how that can serve the regular everyday Guinean better. I think when Cabral talked about the war, they said it has to come from the rural. They were scared that afterwards the power would centralize in Bissau, which is what happened. And so I think there is an obviously effort to look at that. I don't know if I'm answering your question, Sean. Sorry, kind of rambling, but
you did.
Yeah. So I think when you go ahead, Antonio.
No, sorry. No, you can.
No.
You can finish.
I just think it's interesting because, like, when you talk to people about sacred forests, again, this is about value systems, and obviously environmental conservation is very linked with Cabral's history as well. But if you talk about the value of those trees, they won't say anything about the economic value or the value even of conserving it in the traditional way of conservation. That value is because their parents did it, and so they do it for their children, and it's this multi-generational idea of value that you can place on something that is, I think, other societies can learn from that kind of framework. So I think it's really interesting to talk to people about that.
Yeah.
One thing. Sorry, I was gonna try and sorry, Antonio, you can go ahead. My apologies.
No, I just want to say something about what Ricci was saying. I think Sean asked these and I didn't reply. That was about like the ethnic diversity in Guinea in relation to the project of national identity. I really think that today Guinea is closer to national identity than it was back in the day, because I think that the national state has forms, has tools to build national consciousness that the national liberation movement had. Let's talk just about soccer. What a football national team can do for a country in Africa. In terms of bringing pride and helping bring national consciousness as well. And here, I would agree, partially with what William was saying. In terms of actually part of the idea of Cabral, of what Cabral understood as culture, actually happened. Because there is a lot of stuff that started during the war. Even like the Creole that a lot of Guineans talk today. The Creole. A lot of people start to because Creole was came through Cape Verdean, because Guineans, the different ethnicities have their own languages. And actually, a lot of people start to speak Creole. Even Cabral didn't speak Creole before because Cabral's father, Juvenal Cabral, was a teacher, and he was against people talking savage language, you know. So even the Creole only started to grow during the times of the national liberation movement. So there is a lot of you know elements of national culture that started back then, you know.